All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. So today, we're going deep into the Bhagavad Gita.
One of the foundational texts, you might say,
Hmm.
for Hinduism.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like essential reading, right? If you want to understand kind of like the core ideas of Hinduism.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very important scripture and influential, I would say, across a lot of Eastern philosophy, even beyond just Hinduism.
Yeah. And the thing is, you don't need to be a scholar or anything to get something out of it.
Right.
Like, we're focusing on just one verse today,
Okay.
from chapter 18, verse 66.
All right. So getting right to the heart of it.
Yeah. Like, even just this one verse, it's so packed with meaning. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Each verse of the Gita is full of deep, profound meaning.
Why don't we just jump into it? You want to read the verse?
Sure, yeah. So, chapter 18, verse 66, abandon all dharmas and surrender unto me alone. I will free you from all sins. Do not grieve. That's a powerful verse.
That's like heavy.
Yeah, it is. Just
Like
listen.
even just hearing it, like abandon all dharmas. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's a very strong statement. I think that's why this verse is so impactful, because it really is this radical call to surrender to something beyond.
Yeah, it's almost like it's telling you to like give up everything you thought you knew about like right and wrong.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that because, on the surface, especially, coming from, say, a Western background, we think of dharma, the word dharma, and we usually translate that as duty.
Right.
Right. And it does mean duty, but it means so much more than that. It's also about like righteousness, ethics, living in accordance with the cosmos.
Right. Like it's almost like it's like the way things are supposed to be.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when it says abandon all dharmas, it's kind of like, whoa.
Like how can you abandon all that?
Yeah, exactly. But I think to understand this verse, we need to understand the context of where it comes from.
Okay. So the Bhagavad Gita, like what is like the setting for this?
Right. So the Bhagavad Gita, it's not just some standalone text, right? It's part of a much larger epic called the Mahābhārata,
Oh, yeah.
which is this huge, sprawling story about warring families and destiny and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, the Bhagavad Gita itself takes place on a battlefield.
Oh, wow.
Right, like right before a huge battle is about to start.
Okay.
So we have this warrior, this prince named Arjuna,
Right.
and he's facing like the ultimate dilemma.
Okay.
Because on the other side of the battlefield are like all his relatives, his cousins, his teachers,
Oh, wow.
people he's grown up with his whole life. And now because of this dynastic struggle, he's supposed to, fight them to the death.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't even know what I would do in that situation.
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. And that's the context for the Bhagavad Gita, right? Arjuna is completely torn. He's overwhelmed by the situation. And that's when his charioteer, Krishna,
Right.
steps in.
Okay, so who's Krishna, like in this whole picture?
So Krishna, he's not just any charioteer. He is an avatar of Vishnu, who is one of the major gods in the Hindu pantheon.
Okay.
So he's like, a divine being who has taken human form.
Okay, so it's like Arjuna's got like a god as his wingman.
Right, exactly. And that's what the whole Bhagavad Gita is. It's this dialogue between Arjuna, this conflicted person, and Krishna, this divine being,
Okay.
who is there to guide him.
Okay, so like back to this verse then, verse 66.
Right.
This abandon all dharmas.
Right.
This is like Krishna's answer to Arjuna's like dilemma.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see the whole Gita as Krishna trying to guide Arjuna to a place of peace,
Okay.
of understanding, of resolution.
Right.
And it's not an easy path because you can see Arjuna kind of wrestling with these ideas throughout the whole text. But this verse, I think, is like the culmination of it,
Right.
where Krishna says, look, you've tried to figure it out on your own. You've tried to use your own logic,
Yeah.
your own understanding of what's right and wrong.
Right.
But let all that go.
Okay. So this abandon all dharmas is not like literally like just forget about being a good person.
Right, exactly. It's not like go be unethical,
Right.
right? Or go be a bad person. It's more like
Okay.
surrender.
Right.
Surrender to something beyond your own limited understanding.
Okay, so surrender to what? To like the divine.
Yeah, exactly. To surrender to the divine.
To Krishna, right?
Yeah.
In this context, and this idea of surrender is so important, I think, in Eastern thought.
Okay.
And it's not a passive thing,
Okay.
right? It's not just like giving up. It's more like
Right.
it's an active choice to place your trust
Okay.
in something bigger than yourself. Okay, so it's like, it's not about giving up responsibility,
Yeah,
but it's about like trusting that there's something else that's guiding things.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay, so what happens when you do that? Like, what's the result of this surrender?
Right. So in the Hindu tradition, there's this concept of moksha,
Okay,
which is often translated as liberation
right,
or enlightenment.
right.
And essentially, it's this state of being where you are free from suffering.
Okay, so it's like freedom from like worry, anxiety, all kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's much more than that, but that's definitely part of it. It's like this state of perfect peace.
Okay,
And in a way, you can think of this life, right, as being kind of caught in this cycle of suffering,
right.
of birth and death and rebirth.
Yeah.
And moksha is like breaking free from that cycle.
Okay, so Krishna is saying, if you surrender to me,
Right.
then you'll achieve moksha.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate goal.
Okay. Is to find this liberation,
Okay.
this freedom from suffering.
And that's what this verse is like pointing to.
Yeah, I think so. And it's also interesting, if you look at the last part of the verse, he says, I will free you from all sins, do not grieve.
Right.
Right? So it's like there's this promise there that not only will you find liberation, but also, you don't have to worry about the past anymore.
Right. It's like let go of all that baggage.
Exactly. Just let go.
Okay.
Surrender and find peace.
It's powerful stuff.
It is. It is.
It makes you wonder, like, what would it look like to actually practice this kind of surrender, like, in our own lives?
Right.
I mean, obviously, we're not, on a battlefield facing our, relatives and stuff.
Right.
But we all have our own battles, right?
Right.
We all have our own struggles,
Yeah.
our own anxieties,
Absolutely.
our own kind of, like, dilemmas that we have to deal with.
And, I mean, this idea of surrender, it's like, I don't know, it's like, it's kind of a different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about just, like, giving up and being passive. It's more about, like, trusting.
Right.
Trusting in something bigger.
Exactly. And I think this idea of surrender, it's not just limited to Hinduism.
Right.
Right. You see it in a lot of different spiritual traditions.
Right. Like, even just the idea of faith.
Exactly.
Like trusting in God or trusting in something.
Yeah. To get you through the tough times.
Yeah.
To guide you.
Right.
To give you strength.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot that people from all different backgrounds can take from this.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely food for thought.
It is.
Right. Like, even if you don't, consider yourself a Hindu or whatever.
Right.
It's like, what would it mean for you to surrender to something larger than yourself?
Yeah. It's a good question to reflect on.
Yeah. And what would you be surrendering? Like, what worries?
Right.
What fears?
What burdens are you carrying
Right.
that you might be able to let go of?
Yeah. I know, it's a really interesting idea.
It is.
And I mean, I think this is just, one tiny little taste of the wisdom that's in the Bhagavad Gita.
Right, exactly. And hopefully this just gives people like a little taste and maybe inspires them to go and explore it further.
Yeah. So if you're interested in learning more about the Bhagavad Gita,
pick up a copy.
Yeah, there's tons of translations out there.
Yeah. There's lots of resources online too. You can find, lectures and commentaries and all that.
Yeah. And there's also like, lots of different interpretations, depending on who you're reading. So
it's a rich text.
Yeah. It's definitely worth diving into.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.